Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, Apple is experiencing very tight economic times. So, as a last-ditch effort, I have agreed to cut my paycheck in half to $50 million a year. Tim, oh my god, Tim, are you gonna be okay?
No, only 50 million. I don't think I can afford my second jet anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, if you need any help turning around iPad sales with iPadOS or hardware, I can help.
No, there's no saving it. It's already lost. We can't afford this anymore.
Okay.
That's why I cut my salary.
I guess we're just gonna accept defeat now. Let's begin. This question was becoming too common for me to not make a video on it, and I was tired of replying to everyone with the same response. But yes, while overall I am mostly disappointed in the state of the iPad lineup, and it feels like most of us are pretty happy elsewhere. It's like, yeah, the iPhones are pretty good. Should be getting Type-C later this year. We love our Apple Watch Ultras. Even the Apple Watch Series 7 is still holding up really great, and we even like the Apple Watch SE. The MacBooks are really cool, and we're excited for more Apple Silicon to come out in the future with better battery life and more performance on the 3nm architecture. But when it comes to iPads, everyone's just kind of waiting for iPadOS to do something. But based on the more recent reports, sounds like they're gonna take both software engineers from iPadOS away from their work so that they can focus on the $3,000 Angry Birds VR machine that is gonna launch at some point in the next 50 years. And that's why I think a lot of people are having this defeatist attitude of like, well, if iPadOS doesn't seem like it's gonna get any better and dual boot macOS is just too weird, so Apple's not gonna do that. And with Apple reporting that iPad revenue is down and iPad sales are declining, will the iPad ever get so irrelevant and get so insignificant that Apple just discontinues it and decides that it doesn't need to be there anymore? Short answer is no. Thanks for watching. Have an excellent rest of your day. But no, the primary reason I don't believe iPads will suffer the same fate is because the iPods, and the reason those were discontinued, way too late in my opinion, was because they couldn't find a market for it, and the iPhone was just way too good, and it basically made the iPod obsolete, because not only could you charge more for iPhones because they were dedicated smartphones that could take phone calls, and then they needed SIM trays, and you could bundle them with carriers, and you could beef up more cameras on them because it was one device capable of replacing so many. In the iPod, specifically from its origin, was not meant to replace that many other devices. Occasionally they gave it a camera, and yes, you could do some basic wallet stuff with the iPod Touch, but overall, newer iPhones were getting higher and higher end hardware, and as they aged, which was pretty gracefully because Apple had pretty long-term software support, they became cheaper. You could find last year's iPhone at a discounted price, and as iPhones kept getting better and better, and Apple put less and less time towards the iPod, they weren't getting that same incremental upgrades, which meant that for a lot of kids, which a lot of people thought iPods would be good for, using your parents' old iPhone ended up being more practical, and as more and more parents wanted to be protective and know where their kids were and stay in contact with them, it started to just make more sense to give your 6-year-old an iPhone 14. I find that pretty ridiculous, but it happens, and there are kids with very fancy iPhones that they didn't pay for all the time. So, because the iPhone became so capable and so affordable simultaneously, the iPod didn't really have a place to exist anymore. Whereas the iPads, there's not really as easy a replacement for them. Even though we're disappointed with iPadOS and we want it to get more functional and we want it to get more Mac features, there's not as easy a replacement. You know, the go-to for a lot of people is, well, MacBooks are getting so fast and so capable, so therefore MacBooks are replacing iPads, but that's not really a good argument because iPads are still decent, you know, tablets that don't necessarily need a keyboard, and people use them as cash registers for businesses, or you know, a thing to sign with the signature and select no tip because they didn't even offer you service yet. Why are they asking for a tip? But yes, they also are popular for children, especially those cheap iPads. They're used in education a lot, and the Apple Pencil with note-taking is a pretty exclusive iPad experience. And while I want iPadOS to do more, I have to admit, as far as tablet software goes, iPadOS is pretty freaking good for tablets that are like sub $500. For the iPad mini, it's fine. fine. You know, I still want optimized battery charging. I still want a calculator app. There's things I want, but I don't think sales of the iPad will ever decline to the same point that iPods did, because there is, in my view, a very present and maybe not as big as Apple wants it to be, but there is a market for tablets with touchscreens and stylus support, and having something bigger than what a phone is, but not a crazy $2,000 foldable. iPads, you can get them for so cheap now that a lot of people prefer buying that for their children. A lot of people like them for reading books, and I don't think there's another Apple product that's going to eat into the iPad sales as much as the iPhone ate into iPod sales. So, disappointing future, yes, but I don't personally think Apple will ever discontinue iPads as a whole. They're probably making far too much money off of it, even though it's in decline and they're not making as much as they are with Macs or iPhones. But I honestly think most of the profitability with the iPad line is in the accessories. Kind of the genius of the iPad design is making it so that it can't stand up on itself. That's more metaphorical than you really think, but literally, like, you need to buy a folio cover, which is usually way too expensive to get the iPad to stand up, and for a lot of people, they want to buy their keyboard cases, which is $300-400, and I'm sure it costs Apple a fraction of that to manufacture. So oftentimes I think they're selling the iPads with not that thick a margin, but making it back with Apple Pencil sales, because there's no way it costs them $100 to $130 to manufacture those things, and all of the accessories that you buy along with your iPad, that's where a ton of money is made. And Apple, frankly, is a company at the end of the day. They're gonna prioritize money unless it's going to Tim Cook's bank account, that poor man. And that's why I still have hope that eventually, maybe when the Macs are done shining and showing off during this Apple Silicon transition, eventually Apple will actually give some pro class software and bring some more pro workflows to the iPad, because right now iPadOS makes it kind of difficult to treat it as a real pro device. But I've been wrong many times before, so feel free to disagree with me down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel over on Tailosive Tech Pro. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So this is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see y'all in the next one.